Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and over the past one day, we've seen a fake out play out in the Bitcoin price, which I'll be talking more about in just a moment, alongside the fact that the Ethereum short positions are approaching all-time low levels, which I'll be talking about later in this video, so definitely stick around. Just starting off on the weekly Bitcoin chart, and as I've been talking about over the past few weeks, when you're looking at the 1000-day moving average, which is the green line, and the 200-week moving average, which is the red line, which are coming in at around 28,500 and around 22.3k respectively, then technically speaking, right now the Bitcoin price is relatively cheap compared to previous Bitcoin bear markets and massive Bitcoin crashes, because over the past decade of Bitcoin's history, pretty much every single major bear market or major Bitcoin crash, we've bottomed out at around these sort of moving averages, while the weekly Bitcoin RSI has approached either oversold areas or very close to oversold territories. And obviously over the past few weeks, we've been very close to this 1000-day moving average, while the weekly Bitcoin RSI is very close to oversold territories. So technically speaking, there is still some room to the downside here if you're comparing this to the 2018 bear market or the 2014 bear market. But instead, if you look at the March 2020 crash, even though we did dump down towards the 200-week moving average, the weekly Bitcoin RSI, on the other hand, did not enter into oversold territories because that crash happened extremely quickly. And something else to keep in mind is the fact that we've already seen 1 wick to the downside in between these moving averages, which was that 25k low. And something that is important to point out about that 25k low is the fact that at that time, we had a massive meltdown in the crypto market, obviously with Luna and UST collapsing. So you're talking about a project that was worth well over 40 to 50 billion US dollars combined. That's completely collapsed, which is crypto's biggest meltdown that we've ever seen in history. And on top of that, during that same time, the Luna Foundation Guard sold 80,000 Bitcoin, which helped further push the Bitcoin price down to that 25k low. So just keep that in mind. All of that happening pushed the Bitcoin price to 25k. So even though, yes, technically speaking, we do have some more room to the downside if we're basing this off previous Bitcoin bear markets, but just keep in mind, we're probably going to have to see something else happen, like for example, the stock market keep dumping or another major project collapse, in order for the Bitcoin price to dump a lot lower than it has already, considering what has already happened. And so it's due to that reason as to why I'm simply dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin at the current prices. And then of course, if we see the Bitcoin price re-enter in between these moving averages, so basically below around 28,500, and especially if we get any closer to the 200-week moving average at around 23k approximately, then it's at those prices where I'm going heavier into Bitcoin on top of my regular dollar cost averaging. And for those of you who were following me around a month ago, you would already know that I accumulated a lot of Bitcoin down towards around 25 to 26,000, as I discussed here on the channel and also over on my Twitter in real time. But anyway, just giving you a quick update on the daily Bitcoin chart, looking at the Bollinger Bands. Right now, they're basically in the same position as what they were in yesterday. So if you are new to this channel and you have no idea what this means for Bitcoin, definitely check out my last video that I posted yesterday on the channel. And now taking a quick look at the short-term Bitcoin price action here on the 4-hour time frame. And obviously you can see right here that within the last 1 to 2 days, we've seen another fake out to the upside, which is almost exactly like what we saw around a week ago. And once again, as I mentioned yesterday, this is why we need to see more confirmation of a breakout, such as a possible retest or breaking above the previous high. Because in fact, what I said yesterday when we were breaking out to the upside was ideally we need to break above 32,500 in order to confirm more bullish price action, because otherwise we simply do not have a lot of confirmation for this breakout until we make higher highs, or if we see a successful retest, which means the Bitcoin price coming back down to flip 30,700 into potential new support. And in that scenario, that would have further confirmed the breakout. But considering the fact we did not see that, obviously this turned out to be another fake out like what we saw around a week ago once again. But once again, as I mentioned yesterday, we still have some short-term support at around 29,500 due to this golden pocket. And other than that short-term level of support at around 29,500, we do have some more support at around 28,500, which has been even more significant for the Bitcoin price over the past 3 weeks or so. And beyond that level of resistance, we need to pay attention to these previous highs, which are coming in at around 31,500 approximately, and around 32,500. But 32.5k is even more important for Bitcoin, because as I mentioned in my last Bitcoin update video, there's quite a lot of sell orders placed at around 32,500, creating strong resistance at around that sort of price level. And that falls in line with what the stock market is doing, because because if you're taking a look at the Nasdaq 100 index here on the daily time frame, basically over the past 1.5 weeks, we've seen a lot of choppy sideways price action. So yes, the larger trend here on the daily charts is still clearly a downtrend. We haven't confirmed a trend reversal or anything like that. But if you're looking at the immediate shorter term trend, we're looking somewhat neutral here over the past week or so, while we've just been chopping around sideways. And now taking a look at the Ethereum to US dollar chart on the weekly time frame, specifically the weekly Ethereum RSI is extremely close to oversold territories. And in fact, right now, the weekly Ethereum RSI is at its lowest level it's been at since the end of the 2018 bear market. But once again, we're not in oversold territories just yet. So technically speaking, there is still some more room to the downside here. But relatively speaking, according to Ethereum's history, the bottom is most likely closer than the top. But just keep in mind, when it comes to Ethereum, we only really have one significant bear market to compare to. But other than the 2018 bear market, we could potentially compare this to what we saw in the second half of 2019 entering into early 2020, because that was also another bearish time period in the market. And speaking about what we saw for Ethereum in late 2019 entering into early 2020, taking a quick look at the Ethereum short positions on the Bitfinex exchange here on the weekly time frame, you can see here that in recent weeks, the short positions on the Bitfinex exchange have taken a massive decline. And in fact, these Ethereum short positions are getting extremely close to all-time lows. The only other time where the short positions on this exchange for Ethereum have been any lower than what we're at right now was during this time in the market, which was at the very end of 2019 entering into early 2020. And between now and then, the only other massive low in these short positions on this exchange for Ethereum that we've seen was during the middle of last year, looking specifically at around June last year. And with that information in mind, taking a quick look at the weekly Ethereum chart again to see what happened to the Ethereum price during those times in the market. And first of all, as a lot of you might already know, the middle of last year, specifically during June last year, was basically when the Ethereum price was bottoming out, getting ready for another bullish move back to the upside in the coming months. But if you're looking at the time in the market where the Ethereum short positions on the Bitfinex exchange were at their all-time low levels, once again, that was at the very end of 2019, entering into early 2020 during this time in the Ethereum price action, which basically turned out to be an amazing buying opportunity, especially if you're holding for the longer term, because at that stage in the market, the price of Ethereum was beginning to bottom out at around $120 per Ethereum. And only just 1 year later, the price of Ethereum had pumped by around 500%, and just 2 years later, the price of Ethereum had pumped by around 3,000%. Now, obviously, I'm not saying we're going to see the exact same returns for Ethereum in the exact same amount of time, but what I am saying is these traders on this exchange, historically speaking, have been very accurate, because if you're looking at when most of these short positions were open most recently, that was between around November last year and basically around a month ago. And obviously during that entire time period from November to early May, we saw a lot of bearish price action play out, which means these short positions were making a lot of profit. And then only around a month ago in early May, after that crash down towards 1700, we've seen a massive decline in these short positions, over 300 million, nearly $400 million worth of Ethereum short positions close ever since we hit that $1,700 low, which is very interesting and definitely something to at least consider. And just taking a quick look at the daily Ethereum chart, obviously this bullish divergence is still active and still in play. And what's great to see is the fact that the daily Ethereum RSI is still in a fairly strong uptrend at the time of recording this video, which means we're due to see limited bearish momentum for the price of Ethereum in terms of the daily time frame. And obviously this has been true over the past 1.5 weeks since we formed that bullish divergence. We haven't seen a lot of bearish momentum. And now giving you an update on the short-term Ethereum price action here on the 6-hour time frame. Technically speaking, we're still forming this symmetrical triangle pattern as I discussed yesterday on the channel. And over the past 1 day, we have seen a nice bounce from this line of support, which is coming in at around 1740 approximately. But as for this rejection from this line of resistance, we did fall slightly short of that line of resistance because the resistance was coming in at that stage at around 1930, and instead we turned around at around 1920. But considering the fact that that's only a difference of just $10, this is still a valid line of resistance to pay attention to, which is currently coming in at around 1910 to 1920. And once again, this line of support is coming into play at around 1740 to 1750. And it's basically once we break one of those levels, that's when we potentially confirm the next major move for the price of Ethereum. And I'll discuss the price target in my last video on the channel. And just giving you a quick update for Ethereum versus Bitcoin here on the daily time frame. And over the past 1 day, this bullish divergence has potentially been saved after yesterday we were looking like this was potentially potentially about to be invalidated. But technically speaking, we're still showing a higher low structure in the daily RSI. Meanwhile, the Ethereum price action versus Bitcoin on the daily time frame is still showing a lower low structure in terms of the daily candle closes, which is an active bullish divergence. So at least as of right now, while this is on the chart, technically speaking, this does mean we're due to see reduced bearish momentum for Ethereum versus Bitcoin, at least in the somewhat shorter term. Talking about the next few days, potentially even up to 1 to 2 weeks. But when it comes to Ethereum versus Bitcoin, we have to consider the Bitcoin dominance, which is in a strong uptrend at the moment, which means this bullish divergence for Ethereum versus Bitcoin might not last as long as what we might think. And I wouldn't be expecting a major pump for Ethereum versus Bitcoin based on this alone. So for anyone that might be new to the channel, what this means is basically in the somewhat shorter term, Ethereum is holding up relatively well against Bitcoin, but overall Ethereum is still in a downtrend against Bitcoin, which means the larger trend at the moment is essentially Ethereum underperforming against Bitcoin. This is just talking about the somewhat shorter term here. And this is also a pretty good indication of what the overall altcoin market is looking like, which at the moment, while the Bitcoin dominance is in a strong uptrend, the altcoin market is simply looking weak compared to Bitcoin. But despite that being the case, if you check out one of these videos popping up right here on your screen, you can actually maximize your profits in crypto even if prices are going down. But anyway, that's everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.